Quasimoto!
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Quasimoto album. Yessir, whatever. Lord Quas, Quasimoto, aka Madlib, a producer, multi-instrumentalist, DJ, and rapper. A guy who is infamous, incredibly prolific. He's really got more LPs than most, with projects like yesterday's new quintet, as well as Mad Villain. He's also released numerous tracks under a slew of other names too, like The Beat Conductor, Loop Digger, Monk Hughes. And of course, it's not enough that this man just makes a ton of music on his own. He needs to come up with an alter ego to release more music, hence Quasimoto. Now this new release is kind of a collection, an album, a bit of a compilation. It's 12 tracks, which the creation of spans about 12 years, dating back to the release of Quasimoto's first full-length LP, The Unseen, an album that a ton of people who are into underground hip-hop praise the hell out of, and for good reason. And even though there are some new cuts on this project, there are also songs on here that were previously released on an EP, as well as other singles. So it's not like this new release is 100% fresh, though the cuts that have been previously put out are kind of rarities. You know, you're not going to come across them just anywhere. One track after another on this thing involves Lib's trademark gritty, jazzy, blunted hip-hop production, which is funky as well, and of course all of these beats are graced with his verses, which he's known for taking the pitch of them and shifting it up. If you took Madlib and shrunk him down to the size of a gnome, this is essentially the voice that you would imagine coming out of him rapping. And it's a kind of funny thing to hear in an age where the chopped and screwed sound is so prevalent in a lot of the hip-hop you hear. It's almost refreshing in a way to hear somebody shifting their vocals up in pitch. Now at 32 minutes long, even though YESSIRWHATEVER is not as varied or as epic or as expansive as The Unseen, it is still a really fun listen. Even though Madlib doesn't take a lot of risks between the songs on this project, the beats he brings to the table are colorful, they're classy, they got a snap to them, like the song Planned Attack, which has these watery guitar samples left and right. The kicks on this thing are deep as hell, the snares are really thin and crisp, there's a touch of reverb on there. Quasimoto is rapping on this track, sort of trading places with Madlib's lower, not pitched vocal. There are these really catchy DJ cuts flying in and out of the track too. It is the perfect recipe for a head bob. I'm loving the song Broad Factor on here as well. In terms of the rhythm, hiding behind all of the samples, it's a little similar to the track I just mentioned. It's actually similar to a lot of tracks on this LP, but Madlib is good at taking these very similar grooves and coloring them with very, very different samples to the point where each song really has its own vibe. Now there are points on this album that are a little underwhelming, or for whatever reason they just don't stick, like the very obvious and repetitive vocal sampling on the track Seasons Change, or Madlib's kind of underwhelming verses on tracks like Brothers Can't See Me, or specifically the front. Madlib's rap style really tends to be sort of monotone, somewhat lifeless in a way, and hearing his voice pitched down to its normal pitch, it actually is a bit of a hindrance since his voice doesn't exactly read too well against the bassy production. There's also the very short track on here, Young Blood, which I guess I'm not too enthralled with, but I honestly do think if you were to take most of the tracks out of the context of this album and just listen to them on their own, they wouldn't be that impressive to your normal hip-hop fan. Still, even though there isn't, a hot track on this LP, Yessir is far from a boring album, because it really gains power from how all of these short tracks work together as a listening experience. There's a serious power to the odd analog crackle of these tracks as they weave together into this go-go dodo-like hip-hop scape. This is essentially the rap game's answer to Wacky Land. With all the warped samples and synthesizers and ear candy effects, there is something that is truly psychedelic about YESSIRWHATEVER. And as far as verses go, there are definitely some lyrical nuggets on this thing. The song Catchin' the Vibe has Madlib talking about his music career versus the music career of more mainstream hip-hop artists who sort of seem to be overnight sensations and turn out to be duds a few years down the road. Quasimoto also has shots fired at other rappers on the song Planned Attack. There are also flaky people touch down on a verse in this thing. The song Spark Dala is a bit of an ode to marijuana, and the track Green Power, in a way, is actually kind of sad. It's one of the few moments where Madlib's voice, to me, carries a completely different tone to it. There are a lot of rap albums and mixtapes out there that I have heard that deliver a more monotone flow, and it completely turns me off. However, this project really is sort of the exception to that rule in a sense, because this weird monotone flow along with some of the vocal effects really plays into building up this sort of hypnotic, textured, alluring, funny, entertaining, and seductive aesthetic that Madlib pulls together on YESSIRWHATEVER. Even though this isn't an amazing release, it really is a tribute to Madlib's talents that he can grab a series of tracks that are pretty much just a loose collection of ideas, slap them on an album, and they end up this friggin' cohesive. I'm feeling a decent to strong 7 on this thing. If you've given it a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. This review is my opinion. If you don't like it, here's a straw. I want to give a shout out to Eric Andre, Pi, You, and albums that get releases in the UK way before they get released in the US, and I can't even get a chance to hear them or review them. It makes me angry. Also, I want to give a shout out to the rain that's happening outside right now. Thunderstorm. Only the strong subscribe. All mistakes were intentional. Anthony Fantano, Quasimoto, YESSIRWHATEVER, forever.